From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Monday, May the 20th, 2024. As fierce fighting continues in Gaza between Israeli troops and terror group Hamas, the IDF announced 3 casualties this weekend. 20-year-old Staff Sergeant Nachman Meir Chaim Vaknin and 20-year-old Staff Sergeant Noam Bitan were killed on Saturday. And an IDF officer who was seriously injured on May the 15th succumbed to his wounds yesterday. He is 24-year-old Major Gal Shabbat. And the IDF announced on Saturday that 53-year-old Ron Binyamin, thought to be a live hostage, was in fact murdered by Hamas on October the 7th, his body kidnapped to Gaza. His remains were recovered in the same operation Thursday night that, as we reported to you, recovered the bodies of 3 other Israeli hostages in Gaza. The IDF said the body of the abducted Ron Binyamin was recovered along with the bodies of the abductees Yitzhak Gelertner, Shani Luke, and Amit Buskila. During a joint operation by the IDF and the Shin Bet, Israel's security agency, based on information that also emerged, it said, in the Shin Bet's investigations of terrorists arrested in the Gaza Strip and on the intelligence guidance of the Captives and Missing Persons Command in the Intelligence Division. IDF spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari shared the news and reiterated Israel's commitment to bring back all of the hostages.
Our mission to bring home every single one of the 128 hostages who are still being held in Gaza.
U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel's President Isaac Herzog and other senior Israeli officials yesterday in Jerusalem to convene a meeting of the U.S.-Israel Strategic Consultative Group. The White House said the meeting was held to discuss the war in Gaza, including ongoing diplomacy to secure the release of all of the hostages, and it said our shared objective for the enduring defeat of Hamas, also discussing continuing humanitarian aid that is flowing into Gaza. The chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Khan, announced today that he requested arrest warrants from the court's judges for the leaders of terror group Hamas and arrest warrants for Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for war crimes and crimes against humanity. The move causing outrage in Israel and beyond, condemning any sort of equivalence between Israel's leaders and the leaders of a terror organization. Prime Minister Netanyahu released a video calling the arrest warrants absurd and false, calling Khan's suggested comparison an utter distortion of the reality.
The outrageous decision by the ICC prosecutor, Karim Khan, to seek arrest warrants against the democratically elected leaders of Israel is a moral outrage of historic proportions. It will cast an everlasting mark of shame on the International Court. The prosecutor's absurd charges against me and Israel's defense minister are merely an attempt to deny Israel the basic right of self-defense. And I assure you of one thing, this attempt will utterly fail.
U.S. President Joe Biden called the ICC prosecutor's application for arrest warrants against Israel's leaders outrageous. Biden saying, and let me be clear, whatever this prosecutor might imply, there is no equivalence, none, between Israel and Hamas. We will always stand with Israel against threats to its security. President Herzog said this one-sided move represents a unilateral political step that emboldens terrorists around the world. He said Hamas's leaders are oppressive dictators, guilty of launching mass murder, mass rape, and mass kidnappings of men, women, children, and babies. Any attempt to draw parallels between these atrocious terrorists and a democratically elected government of Israel working to fulfill its duty to defend and protect its citizens entirely in adherence to the principles of international law, is outrageous and cannot be accepted by anyone. Jewish organizations shared their outrage. The American Jewish Committee said that Khan is pursuing simultaneous warrants against Hamas leaders, thereby creating a false equivalence between leaders of a democratic country and leaders of a genocidal terror organization, is abhorrent, deeply offensive, and further points to the hypocrisy of this pursuit, saying this effort is a moral outrage based on blatant falsehoods that will harm the court's credibility, completely undermine its core mandate, and embolden enemies of democracies around the world. The Anti-Defamation League called the ICC prosecutor's announcement a shameful, brazenly political assault against the Jewish state, saying Israel's actions against Hamas are a just war of self-defense, and Israel has proven willing and able to investigate and prosecute even the slightest deviations from its stringent rules of ethics, which often go further than its international obligations. And B'nai B'rith International said the implication of equivalence between Israeli government leaders and genocidal jihadists whose operatives have engaged in the mass burning, beheading, rape, torture, and hostage-taking of diverse civilians is unthinkable, saying the pretrial chamber must reject the prosecutor's request and all responsible world leaders must denounce the devastating misuse of the international court. Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Monday, May the 20th at 7 o'clock, the film Names Not Numbers from a Holocaust documentary program. At 8, Abigail Pogrebin speaks with the winner of this year's top prize for the National Jewish Book Award, Jeremy Eichler, to discuss his book Time's Echo, which chronicles how 4 iconic classical composers responded to war, horror, and memory. At 8:30, a celebration of the life and music of Irving Berlin. At 9, Jeffrey Gurock is on L'chaim. At 10, Eric Goldman is joined by filmmaker Ron Frank to talk about Remembering Gene Wilder, his documentary about the legendary comic actor's life, legacy, and battle with Alzheimer's. At 10:30, an encore of this newscast, and coming up next, it's Good Week, Israel. And that's the JBS News Update for Monday, May the 20th, 2024. I'm Teisha Bader. Am Yisrael Chai.